You know how they say after a while, people and their pets start looking and acting alike? Well, the same is true of presidents and their press secretaries, at least in the case of Karoline Leavitt and President Donald Trump. Listen to how she abruptly handled a very rude reporter at an impromptu press conference yesterday.
As possible.
Is the president more determined to go after Tish James and James Comey?
Go ahead.
Is the president more determined to go after Tish James and James Comey?
Excuse me. I'm answering a question from you.
You turned and looked at me. I'm sorry.
I turned and looked at you because you're yelling. I will take a question from your colleague, and then I'll take your question too. Okay? Go ahead.
Yeah, you looked at me because I was loud, right? Yes, you were yelling. She looked at you, but she didn't want you to answer the question or ask the question. She wanted you to be quiet is basically what it was. And she told you in so many words. In fact, now that I listen to it again, she may actually be a little more polite with the fake news media than President Donald Trump is. But the question was about James Comey and Letitia James. No relation, by the way, because James does, but the fact of the matter is that their cases, both of them were tossed by a federal judge without prejudice because, well, they didn't like the way that Lindsey Hannigan handled the cases. They said that they were brought inappropriately. They said that there were not enough, there wasn't enough evidence. And of course, they actually said the prosecutor wasn't legally allowed to bring the cases and that the whole thing was just a sham. It was just a way for President Donald Trump to try to seek retribution on his political adversaries. But the fact that they were thrown out without prejudice means that, okay, Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice can regroup, maybe come up with, better tactics and bring the cases again.
What I will say is that everybody knows that James Comey lied to Congress. It's as clear as day. And this judge took an unprecedented action to throw these cases out to shield James Comey and Letitia James from accountability based on a technical ruling. And the administration disagrees with that technical ruling. We believe the attorney in this case, Lindsey Halligan, is not only extremely qualified for this position, but she was, in fact, legally appointed. And I know the Department of Justice will be appealing this in very short order. So maybe James Comey should pump the brakes on his victory lap.
Oops. Harmy Dillon, who's also the deputy attorney general at the Department of Justice in charge of civil rights. She's already pushing for an appeal and she's already preparing that case because typically this is what happens. President Donald Trump does something according to the law. A federal judge strikes it down. President Donald Trump then appeals that ruling and then an appellate court upholds it and eventually it ends up somewhere near the Supreme Court. But that's basically what was happening yesterday. That was the big breaking news about James Comey and Letitia James that Karoline Leavitt so deftly and expertly answered to the very, very rude media who was yelling and screaming. I'm sorry, you looked at me. Yeah, I looked at you because you were loud and obnoxious. Oh, okay. That's a pretty fair assessment. Another batch of questions she got was about Ukraine and the war in Ukraine and whether or not the war in Ukraine is about to end, because a lot of people are saying the war in Ukraine is coming to an end. And she said, look, Marco Rubio and the entire contingent of peacemakers that President Donald Trump has ushered to the region are very, very confident.
As for where we are, I spoke with Secretary Rubio at length. I spoke with the president as well. Everybody inside feels optimistic about what happened and transpired yesterday in Geneva. Secretary Rubio, Special Envoy Witkoff, the whole team really worked through the points of that 28-point peace plan that the United States authored with input from both sides, the Russians and the Ukrainians. And ultimately, the vast majority of these points have been agreed upon. The Ukrainians have worked on language with us together, and you heard that from their delegation directly yesterday. So we feel as though we're in a very good place. Of course, we have to make sure that all of these points are agreed to. And then, of course, we're going to have to make sure the other party in this war, the Russians, agree to them as well. But I think the president deserves a great deal of credit for the amount of energy and effort he's put into trying to bring these two sides to an end of this war. He wants to see this killing stop. As for any deadlines, he wants to see this end as soon as possible.
Yeah, don't we all? Everybody wants to see the war end. Everybody wants to see the killing stopped. Everyone wants to see Russia and Ukraine not at the top of our headlines. We all want to stop getting questions about it. But Karoline Leavitt said we're very, very close.
The president put that statement out over the weekend. And since then, there have been very productive conversations between the president's national security team and the Ukrainian delegation. In fact, yesterday, Secretary Rubio, Special Envoy Witkoff were in Geneva, and they were able to thoroughly go through this 28-point peace plan that the United States offered with input from both the Russian side and the Ukrainian side, and they were really able to fine-tune the points. And so now there are just a couple points of disagreement that our teams continue to work through. So the president remains hopeful and optimistic that a deal can be struck. And I think he deserves a great amount of credit for the extensive amount of time and energy he has put into solving this war. He wants to see the killing end. He wants this war to end. And his frustration grows out of the frustration of the American people. You know, President Trump stopped the funding of this war, but the United States is still sending or selling a big amount of weapons to NATO. We cannot do that forever. And the president wants this war to end. He is a peacetime president. That's what he's pursuing. And today he remains optimistic and hopeful. And I know our teams are working around the clock to try to get this deal to an end.
And that is something that they've targeted, I believe, the end of the year for. President Donald Trump, as you already know, has slam dunked 9 peace deals. He's ended 9 wars. He continues to wax poetic about all of it whenever someone will listen. And he wants the jewel in the crown is Ukraine and Russia. This is a war that never should have started, as he said repeatedly, a war that wouldn't have started had he been president, and a war that he wants to see end because, again, there's lots of death, and death is bad. Donald Trump basically says people dying is bad. I don't know why everyone else doesn't see that, but in Ukraine and in Russia, they seem to think that the people dying is perfectly fine. It must be like an Eastern European philosophy. But here in the United States of America, we see that as a massive failure. And that's something that President Donald Trump has been pushing for. Now, these peace talks, should they come to play, will, of course, end with Ukraine and Russia being very different than they are right now. Donald Trump has told Vladimir Zelensky, president of Ukraine, repeatedly, you're not going to go back to the way it was. It's never going to be the same. We can get you to negotiate. We can get Russia to make some kind of concessions, but it's not going to be like it was before Joe Biden. And you only have one person to blame for that, and that is Joe Biden. But it's important that you unilaterally understand that the old Ukraine is not going to happen. But in order to end the killing and end the war, you've got to come to the table and be able to make some, concede one or two things. Now, a lot of critics have declared or accused the White House of bullying Volodymyr Zelensky or unilaterally talking to Ukraine on behalf of Russia and not interacting with both sides equally. And Karoline Leavitt said, "Pah, that's ridiculous."
The idea that the United States of America is not engaging with both sides equally in this war to bring it to an end is a complete and total fallacy. And I saw a lot of misinformation and rumors and allegations against people in this building, such as Secretary Rubio and Special Envoy Witkoff and the president himself, that they are favoring one side over the other. That could not be further from the truth. I have watched as the president and his team have worked around the clock overnight with both sides on endless phone calls, endless meetings to try to bring this war to a close. And any suggestion otherwise is a complete misunderstanding of the facts. It's coming from people who have no idea what they're talking about, or people who are pushing their own agenda, or maybe people who don't want to see this war come to an end. I don't know. Maybe they're profiting off of it. Maybe they benefit from it in some way, but nobody in this building benefits from war. We want to see this war come to an end, and that's what the president and his team are proudly working to do. And I think the critics should just take a step back and think about what happened with Israel and Gaza. There were a lot of doubters, and we got the hostages out, and this president secured a peace deal that still exists and is ongoing today. So everyone should just respect the work this administration is doing and watch the process unfold.
Speaking of disrespect and doubters, the Department of War is thoroughly investigating Captain Mark Kelly, retired new U.S. Navy, who is currently the senator from Arizona, and they are thinking about re-enlisting him or bringing him back to active duty service so that he can be court-martialed for his seditious behavior. He is, of course, one of the seditious 6 who released that video urging American troops to disregard orders, direct orders from their commanders, their commanding officers, and of course the commander-in-chief. And that is seditious activity, as President Donald Trump has maintained over and over again on his Truth Social and in many different interviews since this video was released. Mark Kelly, a retired Navy veteran who is also an astronaut who captained the space shuttle, is at the center of this entire investigation and could be court-martialed, removed and stripped of rank, and even, I believe, imprisoned I'll have to double check on that. Karoline Leavitt was asked about that and the president's reaction to it. And of course, the president does not like anybody, let alone a decorated war hero or astronaut, if you will, a senator, somebody who's sworn at multiple oaths, a military oath of service to the United States of America. And then, oh yeah, doubled down as a senator and said, no. Now I'll swear another oath to protect the United States of America, the Constitution, and her citizens. And then you know what I'll do? I'll just go out there and I'll violate both of them with some TikTok video that urges American troops to ignore orders, thus putting them, their platoons, their fellow soldiers, their commanding officers, and yes, every citizen of the United States of America in harm's way. I'll just do that. Donald Trump has no stomach for that.
What's the White House take on how this whole thing has evolved and now this news that Mark Kelly could undergo investigation?
Well, we believe it's deeply unfortunate that these Democrat senators made this egregious and completely irresponsible statement. And let's be very clear, Martha, these Democrat senators knew exactly what they were doing. It's not a coincidence that all of them have military or national security experience in their background. They were leaning into that experience to try and give a wink and a nod to the 1.3 million active duty service members who serve in our United States Armed Forces and essentially encourage them to defy the orders of their commander-in-chief, which is illegal, by the way. Let me be very clear. Not a single order this president or administration has given to our military has ever been illegal, nor will it ever be. This administration respects and abides by the law, and these officials know it. They are trying to sow chaos and distrust, which is a very dangerous thing to do within the military's ranks. The sanctity of our military respects and relies on law and order in the chain of command. And that's what this administration is trying to say. Department of War opened up this investigation against Senator Mark Kelly today.
Yeah. Yep. And there may be more investigations into more in the future. We'll see exactly what happens. I don't know if any of them have top secret security clearance, but maybe that should be the next thing that should get gone. Maybe their top secret security clearance should be gone as well. I wouldn't trust any of those people in a skiff. Just saying. A couple of lighter notes. Yeah, a couple of exciting things happened yesterday at the White House. First of all, the White House Christmas tree arrived, and First Lady Melania Trump was there to meet the Clydesdales, who took a break from hauling, kegs of Budweiser around, and they wanted to, and they decided that they were going to, deliver the tree instead. And there's Melania with her gloves and her coat and everything else. And she's just having a great time. And she's posing by the Christmas tree, which will go up very soon. Also, the White House turkeys Gobble and Waddle appeared yesterday at the White House, and the voting began immediately. Basically, what happens is, in this very interesting and barbaric tradition, 2 turkeys are delivered to the White House. One of them gets a pardon and the other one gets the axe, basically. So when you vote for Gobble and Waddle, it's not just a cute little thing that you're doing. It's actually what's happening is you have a 2 turkeys enter, 1 turkey leaves deathmatch scenario. Only 1 turkey will survive this Thanksgiving and move to a petting zoo where they'll live out their life. The other turkey will end up on somebody's plate. The voting, I believe, has Gobble strongly ahead of Waddle. I'm not really sure. There's no real reason why one would be above the other or ahead of the other. But that's exactly what's happening right now in Turkeygate, or the Turkey Update. If you're following along, don't worry, because we will continue to bring updates. I believe that pardoning will happen today. And like I said, we'll cover that in our second daily podcast. Mark Kaye saves the Republic. In the meantime, if you want to succeed the way only President Donald Trump knows how, if you want to live by the characteristics and business philosophies and principles that have made President Donald Trump one of the most successful real estate investors, entertainers, and public figures, personal brand builders in the world, you can emulate everything he's done. You can do what Donald Trump did if you go Trump yourself. And the easiest way to do that is to get my book, Go Trump Yourself. It's available right now for digital download. You can get the digital bundle, the ebook and the audiobook, delivered instantly for only $24. Go TrumpYourself.com. Get this book today. Start living like Donald Trump tomorrow.